welcome to our next episode of the Hormone Café. In this episode, I want to talk about nutritional status and nutrition testing. So we're going to talk about why do we test nutrients, what nutrients we test, and then also when we test your nutrients, what can you do about it? So when we think about our overall health, when we think about our hormone production, our thyroid, our energy, our cells, our mitochondria, the core of your health is nutrition. What you put into your body is so essential. And when we're thinking about our cycling and our fertility, what we really emphasize is, are we getting nutrition that we need in order to make hormones in proper amounts, where we're making enough estrogen, but not too much, enough progesterone, enough testosterone, because our whole goal is that we have regular cycles. We ovulate every single month. We feel amazing every single day. We have good energy. Our gut's working properly. Our hormones are cycling appropriately. And all of those things are based in nutrition. However, sometimes it's really hard to know what to eat, what ratios to eat it in, and that kind of a thing. And also it's hard to know, are we on the right track? Is what we're doing working? So we do a lot of nutrition testing here at Vera. And one of our favorite things to do is test something called a NutriVal, because what we want to look at is your antioxidants. So when we think about our egg quality, it's extremely important to have high antioxidants because we want to fight off any of those abnormal chromosomes and make sure that we're not having oxidative stress, which means stress that can cause us to have a lower egg quality or an egg with not a full complement of chromosomes or chromosome abnormalities. So the more antioxidants we have in our bodies, the better our egg quality is going to be. So we really care about what your antioxidants are and what your oxidative stress level is. The other thing that we check a lot is our need for mitochondrial support. So mitochondria are literally the energy factories of our cells. So we're talking not just about our antioxidants, but a lot of the different metabolic metabolites in our body come from mitochondria working properly. So we really want to make sure that we have a full complement of like building blocks to make sure that every single cell in our body is functioning appropriately. And then we also check inflammation, which we check as your different types of omegas. So for example, we want to check omega-3s, omega-6s, and omega-9s. Omega-3s are the most important omegas. They're anti-inflammatory, they help us produce estrogen, and they're protective to our cardiovascular health. So if we have a lot of omega-3s, it prevents us from getting heart attacks, for example. And then when we look at omega-6s and omega-9s, omega-6s come from seed oils, and that's why seed oils get a bad rap. It's not that you don't need omega-3s or omega-6s. You actually do need some omega-6s in your body. It's just that when we look at where you get those, it's so much easier to get omega-6s than it is to get omega-3s because omega-6s come from seed oils. And in our modern day diet, a lot of times we'll be eating a lot of packaged foods, or we'll be eating dressings or spices that will have a lot of those seed oils. So our grapeseed oil, our sunflower oil, we want to make sure that we aren't eating a ton of seed oils, and that when we look at omega-3 foods, the top 10 omega-3 foods are all fish. Every single one of them is fish. And then number 11 is chia seeds. So unless we're eating a lot of fish, it's just really hard to get a high omega-3 ratio relative to our omega-6 ratio. But that's something that we look at and focus on. So if you're a person who can't eat fish 2 or 3 times a week, then you need to be taking an omega-3 at least 1,000 milligrams every single day. And then we need to measure your ratios and make sure that's actually what your body's seeing. I have patients a lot who say, I'm eating so well, I'm eating a really good diet, I'm eating salad every single day, and then we check their omega-6s and they're through the roof. And I said, okay, well, what's going on? Why is your seed oil so high? And I had a patient who did an audit of what she was eating, and it turns out the dressing that she was putting in her salad had a bunch of seed oils. So even though she was eating really well, she was putting on dressing that was throwing off her omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. So we do really thorough checking of your blood for your omega-3 ratios to make sure that we're literally giving you the foundation and the building blocks needed to make estrogen. The other thing that we look for is toxic exposure. So we want to make sure that you don't have heavy metals or toxins in your blood or in your body that are affecting especially your estrogen production. So a lot of the things that we look at, for example, is lead, mercury, arsenic, cadmium, and then we look at a bunch of what's called organic acids in your urine. And some of those can point to certain toxins because sometimes we'll have to do detoxes or binders to make sure that we're flushing those toxins, or we need to focus on antioxidants to make sure we're processing and pushing those toxins out of our cells so that that is not affecting our hormone production. So as part of your overall nutrition panel, that's something that we check for. The other thing that we check for is the need for methylation support. So oftentimes there are certain vitamins that need to be methylated. So for example, folate often needs to be methylated. B12 often needs to be methylated, which means it needs to have a special add-on to the folate called methylfolate, or B12 is also called cyanocobalamin. You want to see methylcyanocobalamin because your body can often process methylated vitamins better than it can process non-methylated vitamins, because if you're taking a bunch of vitamins, but they're not methylated and your body needs them to be methylated, then all these vitamins can just be building up in your system and your body can't even process it. So it's really helpful to test some of those things in our nutrition, because then we can see, are we on the right track? Are we eating enough antioxidants? Or if we're not, what are the really specific things that we can look for and dig into? So for example, when we test your antioxidants, we'll look at things like vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, alpha lipoic acid. So when we come back low in vitamin C, for example, our food sources of vitamin C are citrus, so oranges, grapefruit, strawberries, tomato, things like that. So if you come back low in vitamin C, the first thing that we do is look at your diet. Are you eating citrus? And then you might say, okay, Sarah, I'm eating a ton of oranges. I'm eating a lot of grapefruit. My vitamin C is still low. So then we need to look at, why is your body not processing that? Is there something going on in your stomach? Is there something going on in your gut? Do you have an imbalance in the acidity of your stomach or your gut microbiome? So those are the things that we want to look into, because if you're low in antioxidants, that can really affect your egg quality. Something that I also see a lot is we check something called CoQ10, for example. So our CoQ10 sources are meat, chicken, fish, soybeans, nuts, grains. So if we're either vegan or vegetarian and we're not eating a lot of meat and we're not eating enough nuts, sometimes our CoQ10 can be low. So we need to be really creative about how we get those sources from a dietary standpoint. Like, do we need to be eating more nuts? Do we need to incorporate more high quality whole grains? That kind of a thing. Or I had a patient who said, you know what? I've literally been taking CoQ10 every day for 5 years. How can my CoQ10 possibly be low? So then we need to look at, what is that supplement? What's the capsule? What's the filler? Because a lot of supplements are in something called a microcrystalline cellulose capsule. Not everybody's body can metabolize cellulose like that, because cellulose is a very, very thick, fibrous structure. So if you've been taking a supplement and we measure it in your blood and if the blood level's low, it just means that your body is not metabolizing that supplement. So then usually we'll switch to a liquid supplement or a powdered supplement, or we'll have to switch capsules to make sure that your body can actually resorb that capsule. And then we'll recheck your levels again to make sure that it's actually going up. So it's really important to know, what am I low on? What foods do I need to be working on? And then remeasure and make sure we're actually moving in the right direction. And then we check just antioxidants in general, for example. So those are mostly going to come from plants. We call it plant-based antioxidants. So we want to be eating brightly colored fruits and vegetables. And then as an adjunct to that, we want to be doing things like green tea and turmeric. So if we check our antioxidants and they come back low, we look and see, okay, are you eating enough fruits and vegetables? And are we getting enough diversity in your diet? And then if you tell me, oh my gosh, Sarah, I cannot eat another kale salad, I'm just maxed out, then we'll add in supplements. And so we we want to focus those supplements to your nutrition profile and not just be taking a bunch of random supplements. For example, if we test your CoQ10 and it's really, really high, you don't need to be taking a bunch of CoQ10, but maybe something else is low, like your alpha lipoic acid, and then we can give you alpha lipoic acid to make sure that we're filling in what your body actually needs and not giving you a bunch of useless vitamins and pills. Because my whole philosophy of supplements is that you want to be number one, you want to get everything from nutrition. And then outside of that, we want to be measuring it, making sure we're actually giving you what your body needs and what's good for the specific goals that we have for you, instead of just taking a random handful of supplements that we read on Instagram or TikTok was good for us. So it's really, really important to be personalized, because also you don't want to be taking a ton of supplements and be taking a bunch of microcrystalline cellulose capsules, because that can really overwhelm your gut, because now it literally has to metabolize all of those capsules. So please, if your hormones are low, you're not ovulating well, it's really important to check your nutritional status. And we check all those components of your nutrition, right? Your mitochondria, your oxidative stress, your toxin load, your antioxidants, and we see where you're low, and then we focus on just those places where you're low and try to get them higher. And if you're high in something, we don't need to be supplementing that or increasing that in your diet. Other things that we look at, for example, are minerals. You really need magnesium, for example. It's essential for sleep, and it's essential for a lot of different of the metabolic functions in our bodies. So if we're deficient in magnesium, we need to worry about, are we malabsorbing? Do we have issues in our endocrine system? Are our kidneys not working properly? Do we have imbalances in our other minerals that are suppressing our magnesium production, that kind of a thing. And then when we look at our food sources of magnesium, we think of, are we having dark leafy greens? Are we doing grains like buckwheat? Are we doing any dairy, nuts, seeds, beans, things like that? So we look at the different sources and increase our natural levels of magnesium. And then if we're not quite getting there, then we add in magnesium as a supplement. So we look at things like zinc and magnesium and omega-3s, and whether or not we need methylation, whether or not we have toxins. We look at our mitochondrial function, because we want to make sure that our mitochondria are working properly so we don't get really, really tired. We don't have cardiovascular disease. We don't have neurologic issues or brain fog and that kind of a thing. So if you have a lower hormone profile, or your hormones are a little bit imbalanced, we're not ovulating properly, let's definitely check your nutritional status, because we can make a really personalized plan tailored just to you, where we're enhancing everything through nutrition as much as possible, and then only adding supplements where needed, and really tailoring those supplements exactly to what your body needs, and then measuring it again to make sure that we're actually where we want to be. And if we're missing something, for example, if you're eating really, really well and you're taking all these supplements and it's still low in your nutrition, then we need to figure out what's going on with your stomach, what's going on with your gut, why isn't your body absorbing it? Sometimes we have to work on a bunch of different things. For example, we need to work on your gut and your diet. Like, are you taking enough? Are you having enough intake of these nutrients that we need? And then we can also give you some nutrients through an IV. So for example, sometimes people have to work on their gut and do a gut protocol for 3 months, and they're really low in B vitamins and vitamin C and alpha lipoic acid. Well, then we can actually give you an IV, rejuvenate those vitamins quickly so you can have the fastest track to feeling amazing and making hormones properly while we're working on your gut. So we can give you an IV with your alpha lipoic acid, your glutathione, your vitamin C, your B vitamins, so that we're nourishing your cells as quickly as possible and fast tracking you to the best possible outcome as soon as we can. If you want your nutrition tested, please give us a call. Check us out. We would love to help you. And thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Hormone Cafe.